So when it comes to net neutrality, really, there's no reason for anyone to be against it unless they're the CEO of one of several companies. Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, or Charter. Because if you're the CEO of one of those companies and net neutrality is repealed, then you're going to be raking in billions of dollars in profit for your company. But for all of us ordinary Americans, we don't stand to gain anything from the repeal of net neutrality. There's no argument that justifies the repeal of net neutrality, because when you talk to ordinary Americans about net neutrality and ask them if they want the internet turned into a system like TV channels where you have to pay a certain amount of money for certain channels or websites now, obviously they're going to say no. Who would want that? Everybody wants net neutrality. We want internet freedom where we can log on and go to any website we want to. Of course we want that. So really, I think this is a no-brainer, which is why the arguments against net neutrality are so atrocious. Now, we got an op-ed from The Hill by Matthew Kandrach, and he argues against net neutrality. And I wanted to point out his argument because it goes to show you that people who want to repeal net neutrality, well, they're either shills for the industry or hacks for the Republican Party, and they're just towing the party line. So Kandrach argues, investment declined around the Federal Communications Commission's 2015 absurd decision to reclassify internet service providers as common carriers under Title II of the 1934 Communications Act. That is to say, the FCC granted itself the power to subject internet service to higher regulation and taxation. FCC Chairman Ajit Pai noted that the overreaching misstep caused the United States to experience the first ever decline in broadband investment outside of a recession. In fact, Pai said earlier this year, broadband investment remains lower today than it was when the FCC changed course in 2015. So this article is wrong in two ways. It's wrong, first of all, because in saying that there was a change of course from the FCC in 2015, that's incorrect. All they did was solidify what was already law in the United States. We already had net neutrality, and they just made it permanent by reclassifying the internet under Title II. So to say that anything changed is incorrect. Now, this article is also wrong when it comes to the argument he's making. He says that investment decreased under Title II. Since 2015, investment in broadband is down. Well, why didn't you cite a single statistic? All throughout this article, not a single fact, no study, no report, nothing cited. He did cite Ajit Pai's argument, but just simply regurgitating the argument of someone that agrees with you does not constitute as evidence. That's not evidence. So you can't just make these huge claims and not back it up with any statistics whatsoever. And the reason why he doesn't want to show you the evidence is because the evidence contradicts what he's saying, because I've got the evidence. So Business Insider actually reports that in a new report by a consumer advocacy group called Free Press, the group took a look at investments made by the publicly traded broadband companies before and after the Federal Communications Commission put in place its strong net neutrality rules in 2015. In the 2-year period following the new rules, overall broadband-related investment among those companies was up 5%, from the 2-year period immediately preceding them, Free Press found. And if you exclude Sprint and AT&T, both of which decreased their investment after completing the build-out of their high-speed LTE networks, overall investment would have been up 9% according to the report. So reclassifying the internet as a utility under Title II did not stifle investment. If anything, it helped investment. It increased investment, although that's not confirmed because correlation doesn't necessarily mean causation, but it certainly isn't hurting investment. So if you're wondering why this individual did not cite any statistics to back up his argument, it's because he doesn't want to cite anything that detracts from his pro-corporate narrative. Now he continues, by returning to common sense regulation that incentivizes broadband investment and expansion, we can build out more robust networks that keep the American dream alive for those striving to succeed in today's technology-driven world. But agendas that are pushed by netroots activists and funded by tech giants and their billionaire friends, that's hilarious, stand to overturn good policy in the name of appeasing radical political interests. If successful, they will ultimately undermine what should be a politically neutral neutral goal of strengthening investments and ensuring broadband is made readily available to anyone who wants it. So if you want to talk about the influence of tech giants and billionaires, let's do it. Because companies like Comcast and Charter, they've already spent more than $50 million on lobbying this year alone. And Comcast itself has spent almost $11 million. In fact, the Sunlight Foundation compared anti-net neutrality lobbying to pro-net neutrality lobbying, and companies like Verizon, AT&T, and Comcast, all of which who stand to gain the most from the destruction of net neutrality, well, they're the ones who are pushing for the repeal of net neutrality way more than proponents of net neutrality. And the reason why they're spending all this money on lobbying is because the return on investment, if they actually are able to successfully kill net neutrality, would be exponential. They'd make all that money back and billions of dollars in profit. So if you honestly are going to say to me with a straight face that this is about tech giants and billionaires trying to influence policy and not point out how there is so much lobbying against net neutrality, then I don't know what to say. You're just a joke. But he has one last thing to say here. America's internet story is being written anew every day, but rolling back the crippling Title II order of 2015 is essential to protect the internet's future and ensure we remain on a path of continued growth and innovation. Okay, nothing changed when the internet was reclassified as a utility under Title II. If you think the internet is less free today than it was back then go ahead and test it out. Go ahead and try visiting any website you can think of. Do you get a message from your internet service provider saying this website isn't included in your package? Well, you don't, because the internet is currently free and open. So this is a journalist who is lying to you. And it's not like we have to try to guess what's going to happen if net neutrality is repealed, because our neighbors in Mexico actually don't have net neutrality. And guess what? Their internet looks just like television packages that are sold in the United States, where you have to pay more for packages that include different types of websites. What normal, self-interested human being would support this unless they would make billions of dollars in profit? Nobody. Now, there's actually an article from TechCrunch that goes through most of these stupid arguments that a lot of these Republican industry shills are making, and it tells you why literally all of them are wrong. So I will say it again. If you don't support net neutrality, well then unless you are the CEO of Verizon, Comcast, AT&T, or Charter, then you've been duped over by these industries that are going to make billions of dollars by ripping you off even more. So this article is a complete joke, and I wanted to point it out because these arguments are terrible. No evidence to back up any of their claims that they're saying. They're trying to tell you that the internet changed once the internet became a utility under Title II. When that's not true, because we all use the internet, we could see that there's been no difference. But certainly without net neutrality, we know it would change for the worst, because again, we can look to other countries that don't have net neutrality. Looks pretty shitty.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.